Nobody expected it. Not the guests holding their wine glasses, not the security men at the door, and definitely not Madam Patricia Okafor herself. The boy she called Houseboy, the same one she ordered around every day, had just raised his hand and slapped her. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. Cameras froze, people gasped, and Patricia's hand flew to her face in disbelief. But as silence filled the mansion, Samuel didn't run. He didn't beg. He just looked her in the eyes and said quietly, "Tell them who I am." That was the moment everything changed. After that night, everyone would remember him as the houseboy who slapped his madam. But before the slap, before the silence that followed it, Samuel lived a life most people would never understand. Mrs. Patricia was a name people respected. A rich widow, tall and stylish, with a perfume that arrived before she did. She owned beauty salons across the city and loved being the center of attention. People called her a woman of grace, businesswoman, church leader, and charity sponsor. 2 years after her husband's death, she had turned loss into luxury. When Samuel arrived 6 months later, she told everyone she brought him from her late husband's village to give him a better life. It sounded noble, and her friends admired her for it. But inside the mansion, kindness had rules, and Samuel broke none of them, yet still paid the price. He worked before sunrise and long after midnight. He washed, cooked, cleaned, and fetched. Patricia never shouted when visitors were around. She waited until they left. "Useless boy. You should be thanking God I didn't leave you in that village. You can't even carry a tray properly." Publicly, he was her charity project. Privately, he was her punching bag. Yet Samuel didn't complain. He moved quietly, did what was asked, and never talked back. His calmness bothered her, like he knew something she didn't. Sometimes she would look at him too long, her face tightening as if his presence scratched an old wound. Still, he endured. The city outside was loud. Horns, gossip, and flashing lights. But inside the Okafor mansion, Samuel's life moved in quiet circles. Work. Eat late leftovers. Sleep in the boys' quarters. Repeat. Tonight, however, things were different. It was the evening of Patricia's annual charity gala, her favorite stage to prove how generous she was. 100 guests were expected, politicians, celebrities, pastors, the kind of crowd that clapped when she spoke. By sunset, the house gleamed. Chandeliers bright, polished floors shining like mirrors. Caterers moved in and out with trays. Decorators rushed to finish the tables. Samuel worked silently among them, focused and steady. His shirt was ironed, his movements precise. He didn't joke with the other staff or stop to rest. Something about his eyes felt heavier, like he was carrying a thought he couldn't drop. When Patricia finally appeared in her gold gown, glowing and confident, she glanced at him only briefly. He bowed as always, but that calmness was gone. Tonight, he wasn't just serving food. He was waiting for something. And before the night was over, Lagos would remember his name, even if they didn't know who he really was. The night arrived like a show only Lagos could stage. Bright cars, expensive perfume, laughter that carried through the compound. The mansion glowed from the gates to the chandeliers. Security men straightened their backs, valets jogged from car to car, and photographers hovered near the red carpet. Senators, business moguls, pastors, celebrities, they all came, the elite of Lagos society, dressed in fabrics that shimmered under the lights. And at the center of it all was Mrs. Patricia Okafor, the widow who could turn grief into glory. She glided through the crowd in her gold gown, smile sharp, voice calm. "You're all welcome," she said again and again, touching shoulders, posing for photos, collecting praise like trophies. Everyone loved Patricia, the woman who rebuilt her life. On a large screen, pictures of her salons played one after another. Her with politicians, her cutting ribbons at charity events, her shaking hands with church leaders. The applause never stopped. But while the guests saw a perfect hostess, Samuel moved quietly in the background. He carried trays of drinks from table to table, eyes low, steps careful. The scent of cologne and champagne filled the air as people brushed past him like he didn't exist. No one saw how his hand trembled slightly each time he passed near Patricia, who smiled faintly at him. She was in her element, her voice filling the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "in memory of my dear husband, Chief Okafor, I am donating 5 million naira to St. Mary's Orphanage." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. A pastor shouted, "God bless you, Ma." She smiled, pretending to be humble, and added, "I only do what God has placed in my heart." From the corner, Samuel watched her bask in admiration. In the same he was called houseboy, village boy, the widow's helper. None of them knew his truth. When he walked past one of the guests, a drunk businessman with a loose tie, the man turned sharply and spilled red wine on his white shirt. "Hey, houseboy, clean this mess," the man barked. Laughter followed. Samuel froze, holding his tray, eyes fixed on the spreading stain. Before he could move, Patricia's voice sliced through the noise. "Please," she said sweetly, stepping forward. "Even servants deserve respect." The guests clapped again, smiling at her kindness. "What a woman," they whispered. "What a heart." Samuel wiped the table quietly, but something inside him was cracking. The same woman who insulted him every morning was now acting like a saint, and everyone believed it. Across the hall, Patricia laughed softly with her friends. "You know," she said proudly, "my late husband always said family is everything." That line stopped Samuel cold. Family. He turned slightly, his jaw tight, eyes burning. For months, he had carried the truth quietly, waiting, watching. But hearing her say that, so easily, so falsely, something inside him snapped. The music played on. The guests danced. And Samuel stood there, holding a tray that suddenly felt too heavy to bear. The music stopped before anyone even realized why. One moment, Samuel was standing behind the buffet table. The next, the silver tray in his hand slipped, crashed to the marble floor, and scattered drinks across the guests' feet. The sound cut through the laughter like thunder. Dozens of heads turned. Conversations died. Phones stopped flashing. Patricia's smile disappeared. For a moment, her face was blank. Then it twisted in fury. She stormed across the hall, her gown sweeping the floor, her heels clacking like gunshots. "Stupid boy," she shouted. "Can't you do anything right?" Everyone froze. The guests stared, whispering. Patricia didn't care. Her anger was loud now, feeding off the silence. "This is why village people stay poor," she spat. "After I brought you from that backward place, gave you food, shelter, this is how you thank me?" Her words echoed across the room. Samuel stood still, eyes on her, his chest rising and falling slowly. "Answer me," she barked, stepping closer. "Or are you deaf? You can't even say sorry." Still nothing. He didn't bow. He didn't plead. He just looked at her, straight in the eyes. And for the first time, Patricia hesitated. There was something in that stare she didn't recognize. Not fear, not guilt. Something stronger. Her face hardened again. "You're fired," she snapped, voice trembling with rage. "Pack your things and go back to your village tonight. You useless houseboy." And then it happened. Samuel's hand rose and came down fast. A sharp, clean sound that echoed through the hall. Patricia froze. The right side of her face stung red. The room gasped as one. For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then the chaos began. Glasses dropped. Someone screamed. A senator's wife clutched her chest. Cameras flew up, recording. "Call the police." Jesus Christ. Did he just slap her? Security men rushed forward, grabbing Samuel by the arms, dragging him back as guests shouted over one another. Patricia's eyes were wild. Her hand clutched her cheek as she screamed, "Arrest him! Arrest this fool! After everything I did for this ungrateful village rat." But Samuel didn't fight them. He stood firm, breathing hard, his face calm, almost peaceful. He looked straight at Patricia and said quietly, his voice steady enough for everyone to hear, "Madam, tell them the truth. Tell them who I really am to you." The room went silent again. Cameras kept rolling. Patricia blinked, her lips trembling, but no words came out. For a moment, no one breathed. Only Patricia's trembling voice broke the silence. "Shut up. Security, remove him now. He's crazy." The guards tried to drag Samuel away, but he stepped back firmly and raised his voice, calm, steady, and full of something everyone could feel but not yet understand. "My name is Samuel Okafor," he said. "I am the son of Chief Okafor." The entire hall fell still again. A few guests gasped. Someone whispered, "But the chief had only one son. Michael. He's abroad." Samuel continued, his eyes locked on Patricia. "I am his son from before he married Madam. He kept me in the village my whole life." He turned slightly, speaking not just to her, but to the hundreds watching. My mother died when I was 10. My father sent money for my schooling, but he never brought me here. He said the city wasn't ready to see me. People exchanged confused glances. Phones stopped recording out of shock. Others zoomed in closer. Samuel went on. Before my father died, he told Madam about me. He begged her to bring me here, not as a servant, but as family. He swallowed hard. She agreed. But instead of honoring his last wish, she made me a houseboy in my own father's house. A murmur swept through the room. Disbelief, curiosity, fear. Patricia snapped. He's lying. He's just a distant relative from my husband's village. I helped him out of pity. He's gone mad. But Samuel didn't raise his voice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brown envelope. My father gave me this before he died, he said. His lawyer has the original copy. He opened the envelope carefully and unfolded a single sheet of paper, worn, creased, and faintly yellow at the edges. This is my father's handwriting. His signature is right here. Guests leaned in, trying to see. Patricia's hand shook where she stood. Samuel began to read. If I am no longer here, let it be known that Samuel is my son. His mother was a good woman I failed to stand for. Patricia, I am trusting you to care for him as family. He deserves my name, my home, and his share of what I leave behind. Gasps filled the room again. Someone whispered, that's Chief's handwriting. I've seen it before. Patricia's voice cracked. It's fake. He forged it. Don't believe him. But Samuel didn't stop. He folded the letter gently and looked straight at her. Before my father died, we did a DNA test. The result is with his lawyer, along with his final will. It confirms I am his son. Now the crowd was restless. Whispers turned into open talk. Could this be true? She's been hiding the boy all along. 2 years he worked here as a servant? Samuel spoke once more, clearly and without emotion. My father's will left 40% of his estate to me. Madam has kept it hidden since the day he died. There was no more sound after that. No laughter, no music, no applause, just the quiet hum of tension filling every inch of the hall. Patricia stood frozen, her lips trembling, her face pale. For the first time all night, the woman everyone called Madam Okafor the Magnificent looked small and afraid. The moment Samuel finished speaking, Patricia's knees gave way. She sank to the floor, clutching her chest, shaking her head as if trying to erase everything he'd said. It's not true, she shouted, her voice breaking. He's lying. You all know me. I've always done good things. But the panic in her eyes said otherwise. Her mask was gone. Then, from the crowd, a man in a gray suit stepped forward slowly. I am Chief Okafor's lawyer, he said firmly. The entire room turned toward him. And everything this young man said is true. Gasps rippled through the hall. Patricia froze. The lawyer continued, his tone steady but cold. Chief Okafor updated his will 1 month before his death. 40% of his estate was left to Samuel Okafor. Another 40% to Michael, his son abroad. And the remaining 20% to Madam Patricia. Patricia's mouth fell open. You traitor. You. But he didn't stop. After the chief's death, Madam threatened me. She offered me money to hide the real will. She forged documents, pretending the chief never had another child. I regret my silence. A heavy stillness filled the room. The world Patricia built, her reputation, her pride, was collapsing in front of her guests. Then, another voice came from the side. The family driver, an elderly man in uniform, stepped forward, trembling slightly. I drove the chief to the village many times, he said. I knew the boy. I knew Madam was hiding him. More murmurs. One of the housemaids came out, hands shaking. We all knew, she whispered. But Madam said if we ever spoke, we'd be thrown out. It was all unraveling now. Truth pouring out from every corner of the house she ruled. Samuel stood quietly, watching. He wasn't smiling. There was no pride in his face, just a calm kind of sadness. When everyone finally stopped talking, he took 1 step forward and spoke. That slap, he said softly, was for my father. For 2 years, I served strangers in his house while being called a houseboy. The room listened, motionless. That slap was for every time she called me a village rat in front of people. For every insult, every leftover plate she made me eat while she spent my inheritance on parties. He looked around the hall. The same people who had once clapped for Patricia's kindness. You all praised her for charity, he said quietly. But none of you ever asked who I really was. And one by one, the shame began to show. The pastor who had prayed at the beginning of the party stepped forward, eyes full of guilt. He went down on his knees. "Forgive us, son of our departed chief," he said. "We saw you, but we did not see you." Then the drunk businessman who had mocked him earlier followed. Tears streamed down his face. "I called you houseboy," he said. "I spilled wine on you and laughed. Please forgive me." One by one, more of the wealthy guests knelt, senators, businessmen, even Patricia's social friends, all lowering their heads before the young man they had humiliated. Patricia screamed as police officers entered the hall. She tried to resist, but they held her firmly. "Mrs. Patricia Okafor," one officer said, "you're under arrest for fraud, document forgery, and withholding inheritance." The room watched as she was led away. The woman who once commanded everyone, now crying and begging for mercy. Samuel turned his eyes away. "I forgive you, madam," he said quietly. "But my father's will must be honored." Phones were already recording. Within hours, the internet was flooded with headlines. Chief's hidden son slaps stepmother who enslaved him. The video spread like wildfire. Millions watching, debating, admiring his calm dignity in the face of everything. A month later, the court confirmed the truth. The real will was restored. Samuel received his rightful 40% share. Michael, Patricia's son, returned from abroad. Shocked but humble, he met Samuel with open arms. "I didn't know," he said. "I'm sorry for what my mother did." Samuel smiled faintly. "She is still your mother. Let's do better than them." Together, they decided to run their father's business, not as enemies, but as brothers. As for Patricia, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison, stripped of her wealth, her titles, and her social power. The story ended quietly, in the study of the old mansion. Samuel stood by the window, wearing his father's ring, the one the lawyer had kept safe all these years. He looked at his reflection, not the houseboy anymore, not the charity case, but a man who had reclaimed his name. "Father," he said softly, eyes steady, "I kept my dignity, just like you taught me."